The CBS studio lights blazed down on the polished debate stage as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett adjusted her bold red blazer, her expression calm but determined. Across from her stood former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, poised in a crisp navy suit with her blonde hair perfectly styled. What began as a routine political discussion on Face the Nation quickly turned explosive when Crockett suddenly pulled out a folder and slapped it on the table, declaring, "I've got the receipts on exactly how your policies hurt everyday Americans." Bondi's eyes narrowed, but her composure never wavered. She calmly reached into her briefcase and produced a slim black folder of her own, stunning the audience. Moderator Margaret Brennan attempted to steer the conversation back to immigration policy, but the moment had already taken on a life of its own. Crockett, a 42-year-old Democratic rising star from Texas and former civil rights attorney, ignored the redirection and pressed on with fiery resolve. Portraying herself as a champion of everyday people against entrenched power, as her viral-ready voice rang through the studio, it became clear that this wasn't just another debate. It was a defining political clash between two formidable women who weren't backing down. I've watched Pam Bondi stand beside powerful corporate interests for years while claiming to represent regular citizens today. I'm bringing receipts, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett declared. At 56, Bondi represented the established conservative legal world as Florida's first female attorney general, a two-term official known for prosecuting drug traffickers, combating corruption, and taking a tough stance on immigration. A seasoned attorney with decades of courtroom experience and a history of handling high-profile cases, Bondi responded in a measured but firm tone, "I've spent my career putting criminals behind bars and protecting the rule of law. If you want a substantive policy discussion, I'm all for it. But if you're here for political theater, know that I don't intimidate easily." The stakes couldn't have been higher. Crockett, seen as a rising Democratic star and potential future party leader, had put her credibility on the line with this direct confrontation. While Bondi, rumored to be considering a Senate run, needed to appear unshaken and reasonable to moderate voters, moderator Margaret Brennan attempted to steer the conversation back to agreed-upon topics. But Crockett cut in. "With all due respect, Margaret, the American people deserve to know who's really fighting for them and who's just pretending." She opened her folder dramatically, spreading documents across the table. "Let's talk about the real Pam Bondi." The camera zoomed in on Bondi's face, which showed no trace of concern, only a subtle smile that hinted she might have anticipated this very moment. "By all means, Congresswoman," Bondi replied smoothly. "Let's have that conversation, but let's make sure we tell the complete story." She opened her own folder with careful deliberation, revealing meticulously organized documents, marked with color-coded tabs. Studio audience watched in rapt attention as both women prepared to go head-to-head, each armed with their own version of the truth. "The public record shows," Crockett began, holding up a document, "that while serving as Florida's Attorney General, Ms. Bondi received a $25,000 campaign contribution from the Trump Foundation, just days before deciding not to join an investigation into Trump University." Funny timing, wouldn't you say? Murmurs filled the room, and CBS cameras captured the evidence. Social media erupted with clips of the exchange. Crockett pulled out another paper, and here's your work with pharmaceutical companies. "During the opioid crisis, while Americans were dying, your office delayed legal action against the same companies that were filling your campaign coffers." Bondi remained motionless, her expression unreadable. Some saw silence as an admission, others as strategic restraint. "And let's not forget your stance on healthcare," Crockett pressed, voice rising. "You fought to strip protections from people with pre-existing conditions while taking donations from insurance giants. I have the receipts right here." She tapped a thick stack of documents as the studio seemed to grow hotter with tension. Margaret Brennan attempted to regain control, but Crockett pushed forward, her tone unwavering. "The American people deserve better than politicians who say one thing on camera and do the opposite behind closed doors. That's why I'm in Congress, to fight for transparency and accountability," Crockett declared, turning directly to face Bondi. I'm asking you, right here on national television, how do you explain these contradictions?" The silence that followed was heavy, stretching through the studio as viewers at home leaned in, expecting a defensive response, an angry rebuttal, or at least an awkward deflection. Instead, Pam Bondi smiled not nervously, not dismissively, but with the calm confidence of someone who had been waiting patiently for her turn. "Are you finished, Congresswoman?" she asked, her voice surprisingly warm. Crockett, momentarily caught off guard by Bondi's composure, nodded. "Thank you for bringing up these important topics," Bondi began, straightening the documents before her. "I appreciate the opportunity to address them directly." Her tone was neither defensive nor aggressive. It was almost appreciative. She took a sip of water, then opened her folder with deliberate precision. "Regarding the Trump Foundation donation," she said, sliding a document toward Crockett. "This is the official report from the Independent Ethics Commission, which thoroughly investigated the matter. If you turn to page 3, you'll see their conclusion: no evidence of impropriety was found." Before Crockett could interject, Bondi continued, "The decision not to pursue that case was made by career prosecutors. Based on the fact that other states with stronger claims were already leading litigation, was a matter of efficient resource allocation, not politics." She then pulled out another document. "It's for the pharmaceutical companies. Thank you for bringing that up. My office was actually the third in the nation to file suit against opioid manufacturers. We secured over $800 million in settlements for Florida. All the dates and details are there." Crockett frowned, clearly not expecting such a detailed and well-documented response. She opened her mouth, but Bondi gently raised a hand and pressed on. "Regarding healthcare, you're referring to a multi-state legal challenge that raised constitutional questions about federal overreach. Legal minds can differ in interpretation while still caring deeply about healthcare access," she revealed. Another document. "Here are records from my office's consumer protection actions against insurance companies that denied legitimate claims. We recovered over $240 million for Florida patients." The studio was silent now, gripped by the unexpected shift in momentum. What had begun as an ambush was morphing into a more complex and nuanced confrontation. Then Bondi's tone shifted, slightly. "But what interests me most," she said, "is not defending my record, it's understanding why you chose to ambush me with these particular talking points today." She reached into her folder and pulled out what looked like an email printout. Holding it up for the cameras, she continued, "This document came into my possession last week. It's an email from Democratic Party strategists outlining a coordinated plan to attack several conservative women during public forums." The subject line reads, "Messaging guidance for Crockett versus Bondi segment." Crockett's expression flickered, a brief flash of uncertainty crossing her face as the studio leaned into the unfolding drama. "It's dated 3 days ago." Studio audience gasped, and moderator Margaret Brennan leaned forward, visibly surprised by the revelation. "I don't expect you to confirm or deny your involvement in this coordination," Congresswoman Bondi said, her tone unexpectedly gentle. "But I do think it's important for viewers to understand the context of political theater." Crockett's face tightened. "You're deflecting from serious questions about your record." Bondi didn't miss a beat. "I'm not deflecting at all," she interrupted with the polished cadence of a seasoned prosecutor. "I've addressed each of your points with documented evidence. But there's a broader issue here about how we conduct political discourse in America." Turning to the audience, Bondi continued, "What troubles me isn't being challenged. I've spent my career in courtrooms facing tough opposition. What troubles me is the assumption that Americans can't see through orchestrated political attacks." The atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically. What began as Crockett's fierce offensive had now turned into a debate about authenticity in politics. With Bondi unexpectedly claiming the high ground, Brennan, sensing the gravity and tension of the moment, chose to let the exchange continue. "Congresswoman Crockett, would you like to respond to Ms. Bondi's characterization?" Crockett, visibly recalibrating, straightened her notes. "American people don't care about political process. They care about results. And the results of the conservative policies Ms. Bondi has championed are clear. More power for corporations. Less protection for everyday Americans." She paused, Regaining her momentum can distract with process arguments all you want, but the substance of my questions still stands. Bondi nodded, almost in agreement. I completely agree results matter. So let's talk about actual results. She opened another section of her folder. I came prepared for this discussion too. The tension in the studio reached a peak. As both women locked eyes, their documents spread out before them, each refusing to yield. What began as a routine political segment had transformed into a riveting and unprecedented confrontation, one that would soon explode across social media. "What the American people deserve," Bondi said, her voice calm yet commanding. "It's a conversation based on complete information, not selective facts designed to mislead." She turned once more to the audience. Congresswoman Crockett mentioned. "My work on the opioid crisis," Bondi said calmly, "was part of a coordinated, multi-state strategy designed to apply maximum pressure on pharmaceutical companies." She slid a document toward Crockett. This is a joint statement from attorneys general of both parties, praising that collaboration. "Your own state's Democratic AG signed it." Crockett glanced at the paper, but refused to touch it. "For campaign contributions," Bondi continued, "public service requires transparencies, so let's be fully transparent." She pulled out another document. "These are FEC filings, showing that while the Congresswoman criticizes my donors, she's accepted over $3.2 million from many of the same corporate interests she claims to oppose." A murmur rippled through the audience as Crockett's expression hardened. "That's a complete mischaracterization," she said sharply. "It's public record," Bondi replied gently. "Just like my record. The difference is I'm not pretending to be something I'm not." Sensing the conversation veering into volatile territory, Margaret Brennan tried to intervene. "Let's focus on policy solutions." But Crockett, unwilling to yield, pushed forward. "The American people aren't fooled by smooth talk and paperwork. While you were Attorney General, Florida's incarceration rates for nonviolent offenders skyrocketed. That's not just a number, that's families torn apart." It was a pointed strike that visibly resonated with the studio audience. Bondi nodded, acknowledging the issue. "Criminal justice reform is actually one area where I think we might find common ground," she responded, surprising many. "During my second term, we implemented diversion programs for nonviolent offenders that reduced incarceration rates by 18%. She handed over another document. "Those programs have been cited as models by both conservative and progressive advocates." Then, in a move no one expected, Bondi closed her folder and looked directly at Crockett. "But I think we're missing a bigger opportunity here. What if instead of trading accusations, we used this moment to show Americans that women from different political worlds can actually find common ground?" The studio fell silent. "For example," she continued, "we both care about protecting vulnerable communities. As AG, I helped launch Florida's first human trafficking task force, which rescued hundreds of victims. I know you've done important work in that area too." Crockett, clearly caught off guard by the shift from confrontation to collaboration, hesitated. The audience watched her process the moment. "Protection of trafficking victims is something I've worked on," she said cautiously. "And yes, your task force model includes elements worth expanding nationally." The dynamic had shifted. The clash hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed. "Perhaps," Bondi said, "this is the moment to show Americans that beyond the political theater, elected officials can identify problems and work toward real solutions." She extended her hand not for optics, but as a genuine gesture. The studio held its breath. For Crockett, rejecting the offer risked appearing hyper-partisan. Accepting it meant surrendering some of the momentum she had built. After a long pause, really only seconds, she made her move, closing her folder. "The American people deserve more than political theater," she said. Her voice steady, though her tone hinted that this was a tactical retreat, not a full concession. "There are areas where cooperation is possible. Human trafficking legislation is one. Sentencing reform might be another." The studio energy crackled. What had begun as an aggressive takedown had become a tense but meaningful exchange about the potential for bipartisan action, thanks to Bondi's strategic redirection, which disarmed her opponent without diminishing her. Margaret Brennan, seizing the moment, guided the remainder of the segment toward policy ideas both women might support. The conversation remained pointed, but it was now substantive. As the show concluded, Bondi reached across the table to shake Crockett's hand. After a beat of hesitation, Crockett accepted. The knowing looks they exchanged made it clear to everyone watching this was only round one in what would be a long political rivalry. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, social media erupted. Hashtag Crockett Bondi's showdown, hashtag political chess match, and hashtag unexpected unity trended nationally. Clips of the confrontation's sharpest moments and its shocking shift toward civility flooded. Every platform, progressive voices praised Crockett for coming in hard and challenging power with facts. "This is how Democrats should fight head-on, with receipts," tweeted one liberal commentator. Others pointed out that Bondi's polished responses couldn't erase her record. Conservative outlets hailed Bondi's calm, strategic handling of a political ambush. A masterclass, one site wrote. Bondi showed why she was such an effective, always prepared, never rattled. But the most compelling responses came from political analysts and independent voters. "What we witnessed wasn't just political theater," one respected strategist wrote. "It was a glimpse into how modern political figures, even in fierce opposition, can pivot from attack to authenticity and maybe, just maybe, toward progress." It was a striking demonstration of two contrasting approaches to political discourse: Crockett's forceful, no-holds-barred confrontation versus Bondi's poised, strategic redirection, each proving effective in its own right. By evening, major news networks had convened panels to dissect the exchange. On CNN, a Democratic strategist admitted that while Crockett arrived with a clear plan to put Bondi on the defensive, it was Bondi's extraordinary preparation that stood out. Instead of simply defending, she masterfully reframed the conversation. Fox News praised what it called Bondi's tactical brilliance, with one commentator noting, "She didn't just withstand the attack. She turned it into a showcase of why she's one of the most effective conservative communicators in the country." Meanwhile, MSNBC defended Crockett's approach, arguing that her success lay in forcing critical issues into the spotlight even if Bondi dodged direct damage. Elevating the discourse is itself a kind of victory. In the aftermath, both women emerged politically stronger, though in very different ways. Crockett's boldness energized the Democratic base, with fundraising emails referencing the confrontation pulling in over $1.4 million for progressive causes. Within 24 hours, her social media following surged, especially among younger voters, who praised her unfiltered challenges to establishment figures. "This is the fighter energy Democrats need," declared a major progressive group in an endorsement the following day. Crockett's office was soon overwhelmed with media requests and invitations to speak at events across the country. Her national profile had clearly taken a leap forward. For Bondi, the payoff was equally significant, but subtler. Her composed, solution-focused performance positioned her as a viable Senate candidate capable of appealing beyond the Republican base. Moderate organizations lauded her ability to stand firm on conservative principles while still engaging in a tone of bipartisanship. "This is the leadership Washington desperately needs," wrote one centrist PAC, applauding her willingness to explore common ground without compromising core values. Most significantly, confrontation sparked a broader national conversation about how political debate should be conducted. Editorial pages across the ideological spectrum reflected on the event, many noting that the Crockett-Bondi exchange had managed to remain fierce and pointed without descending into chaos. What made this moment compelling wasn't just the heat of the clash, observed one opinion writer, but the unexpected pivot toward mutual recognition of shared concerns. A week later, in a development no one predicted, Crockett and Bondi jointly announced they would co-host a town hall focused on exploring bipartisan solutions to criminal justice reform, specifically around anti-human trafficking measures and sentencing reforms for nonviolent offenders. Whether this collaboration reflected genuine common cause or a calculated image strategy remained up for debate. But the announcement marked a remarkable evolution from their original on-air clash. For voters following this political drama, the message was clear. Effective leadership in today's America requires not just the courage to confront directly, but also the clarity to engage strategically and perhaps the wisdom to recognize that even fierce opponents can sometimes find common ground and the wisdom to find unexpected paths forward. Qualities both Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi displayed in their own unique ways. The political landscape had been subtly but meaningfully reshaped by their confrontation. As these two formidable women from opposite ideological camps showed that even a heated, high-stakes debate need not end in deadlock. Instead, they offered a rare glimpse of what a more constructive, less divided political future might look like. As media coverage began to fade, one question remained. Was this moment of potential cooperation a genuine shift toward a new kind of discourse, or merely a strategic pause in the broader clash between opposing worldviews? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Neither Crockett nor Bondi would be underestimated again. And the next time they faced off, all of America would be watching. If you found this analysis of the Crockett-Bondi showdown insightful, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell for more political deep dives. And share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us continue delivering compelling political coverage.